This is the module 1 of this course on the fundamentals for development planning. And the topic here is evolution of development planning in the Gambia. And here we are going to learn a number of things. We want to know what development planning means. Now we want to see the evolution of planning in the Gambia, the experience right from programming to planning in the immediate post-independence period up to date. Now, having gone through that, we want to look at the various challenges and then the ways by which we can mitigate the challenges. This is what we will be looking at. The module explains the concept of development planning to participants and then offer various definitions and applications in the developing world and takes participants through a historical perspective of development planning in the Gambia right from independence in 1965 to date. Now, how did development planning begin? And why is planning deemed necessary? In answering these questions, we want participants to have idea of the early efforts at planning and the evolution over time of the planning experience and methodology in the Gambia. Additionally, participants will be taken through the modifications in the planning processes and what the achievements have been, especially in the context of recent planning experiences. Participants will be taken through the transition from programming to planning and from the MDG planning approaches to the post-MDG development planning methodologies. The module also discusses the various factors militating against the realization of plan objectives and what can be done to remedy the situation. Now, let us look at the issue of development planning. What is development planning? Development planning as a public sector initiative to achieve development goals and objectives of a nation has witnessed a number of definitions. Planning involves development objectives. Development planning is also defined as an organized, conscious, and continual attempt to select the best available alternatives to achieve specific goals. To my mind, development planning is about identifying national priorities, setting targets, developing strategies, facilitating coordination among various sectors and stakeholders, and establishing monitoring and evaluation mechanisms for achieving short to long-term development goals. This is the concept of development planning that I really want us to imbibe and then to reflect upon as we undertake this course from the first module up to module 6. Now, let's look at development planning and what we normally refer to as development plans. Sometimes there is a conceptual mix-up between these terminologies. Development planning, I will clarify, as a process helps the formulation of effective development policies, whereas the plan is the product of the planning process, while planning is the process itself. This distinction is important as we go through this course. The preparation of a plan is significant because it provides a systematic approach to coordinate development decisions. Moreover, development plans are useful for initiating or stimulating development projects. Planning does not necessarily result in a formal development plan all the time, in terms of having a document printed and produced and distributed. Planning does not necessarily result in this. Arguably, a development plan is not a panacea for ensuring, we would say, not an end in itself. Now, why plan? Why do we need to plan, therefore? The development process has to be planned for several reasons. First, to identify development potentials in a nation, to design a comprehensive development framework, and to have an effective and efficient allocation of resources. This is why plan is important. But over the post-independence period in the whole of Africa, where planning has witnessed ups and downs. And at a point, it has been abandoned completely in the 80s and so on. Now, let's look at the scenario. The abandonment of planning at a point had tended to scuttle development activities in many countries in Africa. This abandonment, which came out in the 1980s and 1990s, was part of the conditionality imposed under the structural adjustment programs of that era. Under SAP, you will remember, the emphasis was on managing African countries from the perspective of achieving international debt recovery and short-term financial balances in line with the then Washington consensus, not on achieving long-term transformation and development in Africa. For as long as the dislocation lasted, the need for planning was even more pronounced, and with time it was clear that the planning gaps and development imbalances needed to be addressed. So planning had therefore witnessed revival over the last few years. The development planning was embraced in Africa by countries across the sub-regions. Ethiopia, for example, developed the Growth and Transformation Plan from 2010 to 2015, Citizens Revival. Morocco adopted an emergency plan in 2005 and later came up with the National Pact for Industrial Emergence between 2009 and 2015. In 2009, Nigeria adopted Vision 2020 to launch Nigeria onto a path of sustained social and economic progress and accelerate the emergence of a truly prosperous and united Nigeria. Now, this resurgence is accounted for by a number of factors, and we can identify them for our understanding. First, the hippie conditionalities. The highly indexed poor countries at that time had been encouraged to adopt some measures so that they could repay their debt. It therefore means that the PRSPs led back to national development planning after that. The second, the new waves of national development plans are also a response to the challenge posed by the MDGs of 2000 and the SDGs of 2015, the existence of which required a planning and monitoring framework. Some analysts consider the return of national planning as a counter-narrative to the global agreement embodied in the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development in Africa. A fourth reason for the return of national planning relates to the fears and opportunities presented by some of the forces of economic globalization. Now, if we want to, against this backdrop of the resurgence, revival of planning, we want to keep track of the development trend in the Gambia, from programming in the immediate post-independence era to development planning proper in recent times. So we want to examine this trend and then look at the various objectives, the focus, the policy priorities, the programming efforts, and then the implementation, the challenges. And we want to look at this within key subperiods and then identify the challenges so that we can make suggestions about ways of strengthening the planning paraphernalia and the processes to make sure that we have a results-oriented planning activity. Now, over the past half a century, efforts at developing the Gambia had witnessed a distinct transition from program development to development planning, especially since independence to date. Now, we have the period, the first development program. Now, mark you, this is not the development plan era. Before that, we have programming activities. And the first organized and official program was between 1964 and 1967. At independence in 1965, the Gambia started out with a a fragile monocultural economy, depending on. Government commenced the implementation of the first development program 1964 to 1967, which sought to achieve 4 major objectives at that time. It wanted to rehabilitate the country's public access, expand and improve health and education services, to build infrastructure base of the country, and to create opportunities for productive employment, particularly for the urban use through expansion of the public service. Now, after this, we have the second development program, 1967 to 1970. This program was essentially a continuation of the first one in terms of priorities, funding, challenges, and achievements. In a nutshell, the objectives of the program were to improve and expand infrastructure facilities, to improve facilities for the storage and handling of the groundnut cash crop, to improve cultivation through development of seed stores, and erection of mixed farming centers, and to expand facilities for livestock production. There was also the third development program, 1971 to 1974. This program had 3 major objectives. First, diversification of the production base of the economy. Second, improvement of the productivity of the agricultural sector. And third, creation of employment opportunities. Now, after that, we now come to the era of development planning, right from 1975 to 2018. The Gambia witnessed various forms of development plans during this period, although a few will not qualify to be so described. But the obvious ones in this regard were the poverty reduction strategy papers of 2003 to 2011, which were essentially donor-driven. But we can recognize the 1975 to 1980 as the first development plan period. The plan was launched in July 1975 with the major objectives to increase GDP by 25% over the plan period, to achieve rapid growth in the agricultural sector so as to raise domestic output, and to reduce rural-urban disparities in the levels of economic and social development. Now, after that, the plan was implemented, priorities focused, although there were challenges. Now, after that, we have the second development plan period, 1981-82 to 1985-86. The plan was drawn up against the background of a difficult economic situation characterized by decline in groundnut output and in export earnings during the last 2 years of the first plan, and the emergence of large budgetary and balance of payment deficits. The plan was launched in July 1981, and this plan sought to achieve an adequate rate of growth of GDP, to remove the balance of payments constraints, to strengthen the government's financial position, to maintain price stability and keep inflation under control, and to maintain free imports and payments, thus avoiding price and other distortions, and to provide an appropriate environment for participation of private enterprise in economic development. Now, thereafter came the Program for Sustained Development, which was launched in 1990. The program was presented to development partners at a roundtable conference held in Geneva in December 1990. And the main thrust was on increasing the growth of output, giving a large role to the private sector in this regard. Second, to develop the required human resources and to consolidate the benefits and achievements of the ERP while maintaining the strict budgetary and financial discipline that was adhered to during the economic recovery program period. Then after that, we have the strategy for poverty alleviation. Thereafter, we have the PRSPs, we have the first PRSP, 2003 to 2005. The PRSP one was formulated under a broad-based and prolonged consultative process held in October 2000. And the overall goal of the first PRSP was to reduce income disparities in access to sources of income and empowerment. There are a number of objectives. The first objective for achieving the overall goal was development of an enabling environment for pursuit of economic growth and poverty reduction. The second objective was enhancement of the productive capacity and social protection of the poor, while the third was improvement of the coverage of basic social services needs of the poor. The fourth objective was mainstreaming cross-cutting poverty issues into development management. And after the first PRSP, we have the second PRSP, 2007 to 2011. It was a continuation of the first PRSP, but strengthened its focus on the MDGs. The focus of the PRSP was on 5 pillars. First, improving the enabling policy environment to promote growth. Second, enhancing the capacity and output of productive sectors. Third, improving coverage of basic social services. Fourth, enhancing government systems and building the capacity of local communities. And 5, mainstreaming cross-cutting issues such as gender, youth, HIV/AIDS, nutrition, environment into the development process. After the PRSPs, we now have the Program for Accelerated Growth and Employment, page 2012 to 2015. The preparation of the page was highly participatory at all levels and hinged on 3 major pillars. The first pillar is accelerating and sustaining economic growth. The second pillar, improving and modernizing infrastructure in transport, energy, and information and communication technology. And the third pillar was on strengthening human capital stock to enhance employment opportunity. After all this, we now have the National Development Plan 2018 to 2021, which is the latest. With the passage of time, the Gambia is coming to grips with the need for better planning, has become increasingly better equipped to meet the planning requirements. This is exemplified with the first post-MDG plan, which is referred to as a National Development Plan 2018 to 2021. Now, all these plans from the first development plan, 1975 to 80, and all the programming approaches to development, had moved Gambia a step forward each time. But there are a number of challenges every time in terms of weak capacity, weak executive capacity. Funding is also a major challenge. The external component of the funds for development was actually huge, and with high level of indebtedness, it has been increasingly impossible to fully meet all the development targets and then accomplish the objectives. So we need therefore to see how we can mitigate these planning challenges. And there are 3 approaches we are putting emphasis on in this course. There are 3 approaches. First is to strengthen the national plan coordination mechanisms, because this is one area of weakness, and there's a big challenge in terms of lack of coordination of many of the development efforts. There is also to strengthen the linkage between the annual plans and the plan itself. This is an area that must be improved upon. Then monitoring and evaluation has been very weak, and it is important to make sure that there is better approaches to monitoring and evaluation to make the system effective and result-oriented. So there are a number of suggestions in this area, in this course, in terms of strengthening the national planning coordination. It is important to, first of all, identify the various weaknesses. The weaknesses in plan coordination manifest in various ways. And first is the dysfunctional institutional management. Second, there's a weak monitoring and evaluation systems. Third, the weak links between the Central Planning Agency and the Minister of Finance on the one hand, and between them and line minister on the other hand, is a major challenge. Fourth, there is a mismatch between resource allocation and national priorities. Strong coordination between the Central Planning Agency and the Minister of Finance is a prerequisite for aligning financial resources with national development priorities, and this fact must be recognized. Fifth is the asymmetric power relations between the Central Planning Agencies and the Minister of Finance. There's also weakness of the Central Planning Agency itself. Then intergovernmental conflicts in the case of countries with federal structure is a major problem of coordination, which Gambia can learn from in terms of finding ways of strengthening the coordination. Specifically, as far as Gambia is concerned, there are a number of suggestions here. First is the creation of synergy among sectoral policies to avoid the risk of such policies contradicting each other and making overall development targets unattainable. Then identifying mechanisms for integration of sectoral and macroeconomic priorities is very important. The coordination of activities of development partners is also very, very important. And proper alignment of the programs and projects of implementing agencies with the priorities stipulated in the National Development Plan is a major mechanism to strengthen the coordination process in the Gambia. There's also need for institutional restructuring. The second means of strengthening the coordination issue is the link between the plan and budget. There's need to create a proper link between the development planning and budget planning. The budget essentially is an instrument for the implementation of development plans. Being an annual plan, the budget must reflect the priorities in the medium-term plan. It has to take into consideration the key cost elements, the cost of personnel, administrative, and investment activities that will contribute to the achievement of the various policy objectives in the plan. Needless to emphasize the need to determine appropriate spending priorities that reflects the yearnings and aspirations of the people within the limits of available resources and in accordance with the broad goals and objectives of the National Development Plan. The third approach to mitigate this inefficiency is effective monitoring and evaluation system. There must be a well-structured, efficient mechanism for monitoring the implementation of policies and projects. Monitoring of implementation and ensuring early intervention when things go wrong are absolutely crucial for development success. Besides, there should be effective monitoring and evaluation to promote transparency and accountability and ensure that the people derive the expected benefits. The monitoring and evaluation activities should be strengthened through adequate skilled personnel, impressive staff remuneration, provision of field vehicles for monitoring, as well as appropriate tools and monitoring indicators. So having reviewed the various and the trends from programming to development, the challenges and ways of mitigating these challenges, we can conclude that post-SAP experience development planning portrayed paradigm shifts in development planning. Over the years, emphasis has been placed on prioritizing both economic and social sectors in the development process, rather than giving disproportionate priority in the social sector, as was the case under the structural adjustment programs, for instance. The fact has also been recognized that development planning is a non-linear process. It is a means to an end and not an end in itself. Global experience shows that a successful transformation process is driven primarily by a strong and focused national vision underpinned by a time-bound measurable development plan, such that between 2008 and 2013, no fewer than 30 African countries adopted new long-term visions and 3 to 5 year plans to bring them about. Additionally, there must be room for feedback mechanisms, monitoring and evaluation of performance, and review of priorities. Besides, cognizance must be taken of the fact that attainment of plan objectives depends on the standard and quality of governance, economically, politically, and socially. Yeah, thank you very much. I think here we conclude the presentation of the first module of the course. It has taken us, from knowing what planning and all that, the Gambian experiences, the weaknesses and challenges, and the various ways by which we can mitigate these challenges in order to achieve the desired objectives. Thank you.